to be because I know what the conversation's out there. And I think I'd seen another video of a different media show like that, and actually what ended up happening is when the family, the husband and wife had the decision, all the children, it kind of like snowballed, and the children had the decision with their spouses as well. And to me, the best thing about that is it's a culture change. Our society doesn't like to talk about death, and we, the statistics is that we're all going to die, and it's 100%, right? But we don't like to talk about it. So it's a good way to change that culture. So the MOLST document, which we're going to talk about now, it serves as a set of medical orders that deals with the here and now. So it's a medical order just like medications, just like nursing treatments. It is a medical order. As you can see, it's signed by the attending primary physician or the appropriate nurse practitioner or physician assistant. It is meant to be a portable document that can transfer with the patient from one setting to the next. And that's the reason it's on this bright colored paper. If you actually Google Ohio MOLST, the one you'll find looks different than this, and it's hot pink. But what we found in the greater Cincinnati area is what happens to hot pink when you fax or copy it. If you've never done it, it turns black. It doesn't work. So they changed to this bright goldenrod copy, and then what we did in this area is we tweaked the form a little bit and moved the physician's signature from the back to the front, because again, when you have a two-sided form, you end up losing that second side sometimes. And so it does need a physician and the patient or their healthcare power of attorney's signature. How this translates into computer documentation is always being explored. That's always a lovely challenge. So when does it need to be reviewed? Well, it needs to be reviewed whenever there's a significant change in the patient's health status and their treatment preferences or their healthcare setting. Got Christmas music in the background. Love it. Love it. This is a real movie. So that's the thing that you want to remember, because some people will say, okay, so what happens if I send one of my patients from Bailey to the hospital with this form? The physician, this is a protocol. This is what we want to do in our area. It is signed by your physician. It is a set of medical orders. The physician is ethically and morally responsible to review this document just like they do a medication reconciliation. They review nursing orders. They may need to transfer the orders to their organization's form, but as far as I'm concerned, they must review this with the patient because that's what they are held to do. These are the patient's wishes. So let's talk about the form. We're just going to go through it real briefly. So the first section is attempt resuscitation or do not attempt resuscitation. We either do it or we don't, okay? Currently, until it passes legislation, you do still need to attach the current legal Ohio DNR to it, and that's what that's telling you. The second one is the medical interventions, and that's where you talk about comfort measures, limited additional interventions, which are things that may include a CPAP or a BiPAP, and then full intervention as well. And when we do the 8-hour class, we go through this quite a bit more, so you can ask me any questions if they pop up, okay? The second section is antibiotics. Basically, the antibiotics, there's a lot of discussion about whether or not that should be rolled into the medical interventions, because really, we always use antibiotics if clinically indicated. There's very few circumstances where we wouldn't use antibiotics. Probably the best example I can think of is a dementia patient like my grandmother who kept having UTIs after UTIs after UTIs. They weren't fixing anything, they weren't doing anything, and really at that point it wasn't a benefit because swallowing became a difficulty. So again, most of the time though, you're going to use them if clinically indicated. Artificially administered hydration and nutrition. Always offer food by mouth if feasible. This is a big concern for you guys, I know, because a lot of patients, when we get to that point, what do we do about that? So at this point in time, one of your resources you may end up pulling in is your spiritual resources, right? Chaplains. I always talk about, I know I'm Roman Catholic, and it's a big debate in my faith, even amongst priests from different parishes. So it is very much based on spiritual at times. If you look at that section E down at the bottom, it talks about these orders were discussed with who, and then it also reviews where the documents are held. I know when I just filled out those healthcare power of attorney and put my children down this time instead of my girlfriend. And then what I did with them is I made copies and I put them in my safe. Perfect, right? They're in a great place. Guess who doesn't have combinations to my safe? My children. I'm not going to give them combinations to my safe. There's stuff in there they don't have any right to at this point in their lives. So I had to make other copies and put them accessible. So it's thinking about those things, and the form is a great reminder of that. Then the back of the form, again, there's other contact information and then directions for healthcare professionals. And I'm not going to read that to you guys. We're all adults. You can look at that. And then again, another reminder to attach the DNR form. So we're just going to go over 2 scenarios and just kind of get a feel for how this form may have gotten filled out. Okay, so the whole conversation has already happened. The goals have been identified. The patient's values have been identified. And this is just a kind of down and dirty explanation of the scenario. Mr. Baker is a patient with end-stage lung disease, congestive heart failure, and diabetes. He has made an appointment with the MOLS facilitator at his physician office because he wants to discuss his end-of-life care wishes. He takes multiple medications to control his angina and high blood pressure. He does not want CPR. He does not want to be admitted to a hospital unless he is not being kept comfortable at home. And he wants to be comfortable even if the medications make him sleepy or less talkative. So is he a CPR or do not attempt for CPR? Do not. Full intervention, limited additional, or comfort measures only? And the beauty of this form, look at this. There's a section for additional orders and instructions. So you can actually put in there, use medications even if they make me sleepy and less talkative. Is that important for anybody to know? Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. If you've ever dealt with, as a hospice nurse, I know that was important all the time because we know that's the side effects of pain medications, right, and anti-anxiety medications. So it's good for the healthcare power of attorney to be able to support that decision when Brother Joe flies in from Atlanta, Georgia, and is mad that the patient can't talk to him. Mrs. Stella has been living with dementia for many years. Her daughters have agreed to meet with the advanced care planning facilitator to discuss what they believe are their mother's wishes for her future health care needs. So that's the other beauty of this, is if the patient can't participate, the document can be filled out with the healthcare power of attorneys. Now, the patient has to not be able to participate because of mental cognition, not just because they're getting their hair done or they're going to physical therapy. They state they've had many conversations with their mother about her wishes before her confusion worsened. She does not want CPR attempted if her heart or breathing stops. She would be okay with being maintained on a ventilator short term if there was a good chance she would recover and be removed. She does not want to receive antibiotics if she has an infection that keeps returning despite treatment, and she would not want a feeding tube to prolong her life. So is she a CPR or no CPR? No CPR, right. Full intervention, limited additional, or comfort measures only. She was willing to have the ventilator for short term, and I know we didn't go over the form really in depth. It is full intervention, because that's where the ventilator would come into. That's full intervention. Now what she said though is if there wasn't a good chance, and that's a lot, we talk about that during the facilitator training. What does good mean? What's that outcome to her? And those are the kind of things that you investigate with the facilitator conversation, is tell me a little bit more what you mean by good. Well, if my condition continues to improve. So again, this is a starting point. Once that crisis period is over and these medical orders have been followed, then there's still going to be conversations going on between the healthcare facility and physician and the healthcare power of attorney, right? Because we still need to discuss, okay, this is where things are now, where do we move from here?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I guess to refresh my memory. Say she's full intervention with no additional orders or comments, and then a week later she wants the comment. You make up a new form?
Yes, yes. Because it is a medical set of orders, anything that changes on the form, you have to create a new form. Because kind of think of it, if the doctor comes in and writes Lasix 40 daily on Monday, and then he decides on Wednesday to change it to 80, he can't just go back and X out that 40 and write 80 and initial it, right? He would have to rewrite the order over entirely. Good question. The other thing is that brings to my mind is if you go through the training and you start having these conversations with your residents, if a section's ever not filled out, it defaults to the most aggressive. Okay. Did Mrs. Stella want antibiotics?
She only wanted them if they infection was recurrent, then she did not want it.
So we want them if clinically indicated,
Clinically indicated.
except stop using if she has a recurring infection despite treatment. And again, in the class we talk a lot about too, about how this, you really want to run this language by the patient before you would ever fill it in to make sure that that's really what they want to say. Because you guys all know, you can say something and somebody else interprets it totally differently. What about tube feedings? Does she want any tube feedings? She said no tube feedings. Now, take a deep breath. I swear I'm not going to read this to you. This is just an example that obviously everything we do, we document, right? So you would still document the conversation if you were one of the facilitators having the conversation. If you're one of the staff that want to read about the conversation, then you would be able to read what happened. Any questions? Yeah.
You know, on ones like this one, I think it would be hard to do, like this one where it says artificially administered hydration. And the ones that's trial period of hydration nutrition by 2. Those are tough ones because, like, I know when I say to my dad, do you want a feeding tube? Do you mean like that, you know, that's a hard trial one because you've got to go in and have the procedure done. Do you know what I mean? Like, so when you need hydration by 2, does that mean G tube or does that mean like a nasogastric tube? You know what I mean? Like, or do you need to upgrade that? Would be okay with an NG tube, would not be okay with the procedure of an NG tube. You know what I mean?
The question that I was asked, just for sake of the video, is that section under D, the trial period of hydration nutrition by 2, that's very vague. What do you mean by defined trial period? And again, I would probably try to stay away from that trial period as best I can, because even if they said, yes, I'll take artificial nutrition only by NG tube, I would still check long term, but then I would put only by, you know, and just make it very clear. Because what's long term? Is long term 3 days? Is it 3 weeks? I mean, what's long term?
That's really big, and we see
Yes.
that a lot, and that's why I asked, because we've got a lot of people that have swallowing issues that we have to, or Parkinson's, that type of stuff, and we deal with swallowing a lot. And what
Okay.
families want to do in terms of feeding.
I don't think you would be wrong choosing either trial or long term, but just make it very clear under those additional orders. Because I think you came up with a great example. I'm okay with an NG tube. We all know you can only have an NG tube for so long before they would have to put a G tube in. Yes. Or, and I think just even for the sake of keeping that hole open with the vocal cords and all that kind of stuff. I know with a trach it's an issue. So yeah, I would do the trial period. Another one is a stroke. You know, maybe they're a little aphasic for the first week of the stroke and they're just going to do the tube feeding to get them through that time period. So again, you just want to make it very clear, and that's the beauty of having additional orders on here, is it gives you that opportunity to put it right on this form. And then I would cover it in my documentation as well. Any other questions? If any come up between now and whenever, Kelly knows how to get a hold of me, so you guys can run them through Kelly and she will put me in touch with you, okay?
So who's going to be the initial person? Is the, like you said, social worker, is the nurse going to be the one that's going to our admitting nurse at one point, or is it going to be like a combination of a care conference with the
Each
social
ECF
worker?
is doing it a little bit different. At Hyde Park Healthcare Center, they do it on admission, and then they also do it with each care conference. They typically team up, and they typically have a nurse and a social worker. And sometimes Melanie, as the DON, sits in as well, depending if it's a particularly tough case. But each organization can set it up however it works best for you. So, and again, I can put you in contact with Melanie, and she can kind of walk through. I know Dupree is also looking at this, Tri-County Extended Care. There's a lot of resources that you guys can reach out to. I mean, I think this is a great time for the sake of the community to work together and really share what we found works and what we found doesn't work.
Right now, Jane and everybody else, the people here who have been trained thus far are admissions, social work, and pastoral care. Karen Rowan has also been trained too. She's not able to help right now because of being on maternity leave, but she got trained also just from a nursing standpoint to, you know, have that information. So that's who is trained right now, and we're just kind of working on how to get it out in the, you know, out into our facility.
You guys are in the grassroots initiative. Isn't that exciting? It's awesome. Better to hear about it beforehand than after it's up and running. So this is awesome. Alrighty. Well, we're done. So Marie has your CEs.
If you would like a CE to